evening and welcome to Alberta Primetime. I'm Jefferson Humphreys. Jennifer is off tonight. Well, Alberta taxpayers have invested hundreds of millions of dollars in nanotechnology, but the sector still falls well short of the province's goal of a multi-billion-dollar industry. We'll find out where the money's going and how realistic the goals are. Also tonight, an Alberta actress hits the big screen. Jennifer goes one-on-one with Megan Heffern. And on the Wednesday crime panel, outrage over the pardon of convicted sex offender Graham James. Will it lead to change? But first, Alberta's nanotech sector on the rise. That's where Alberta Primetime begins tonight. The Alberta government has vowed to build Alberta's nanotechnology sector into a $20 billion industry by 2020. And though hundreds of millions of dollars have been pumped into the emerging industry in the last decade, the sector is currently valued at around $800 million. Is the $20 billion goal attainable? Where does the investment need to come from to make it happen? Or are expectations too high? And with us here to answer those questions, Dan Djukich, Acting Executive Director of nanoAlberta, a unit of Alberta Innovates, Ken Brizel, CEO of the nonprofit innovation center ACAMP, or the Alberta Centre for Advanced Micro Nanotechnology Products, and Steve Petrone, CEO and Chief Technology Officer of Quantiam Technologies. Thanks very much for coming in, gentlemen. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having us there.
Dan, I'm going to start with you. I don't think a lot of people know that the National Institute for Nanotechnology is right here in Alberta, in Edmonton. Give us a sense of the infrastructure that does exist for this sector in Alberta and how much money we've put into it over the last decade or so.
Well, certainly the National Institute for Nanotechnology is one of the pillars of the Alberta nanotechnology strategy and of nanotechnology efforts in Alberta. Also, we have the Alberta Centre for Advanced Micro and Nanotech Products, which is represented here by Ken. And we also have some fantastic facilities at the University of Alberta and also at the University of Calgary that help support this activity, including fabrication, synthesis, and characterization.
Would you characterize it as it's in its infancy or a fairly well-developed infrastructure? Where would you put it?
The infrastructure is very well developed now, and NINT, as we call it, it represents a coming together of this infrastructure where it is very complementary to the infrastructure that exists on the campus of the University of Alberta.
Okay, and how much money have we put into it, sort of?
Well, NINT, the original investment was $120 million split between the Alberta government and the federal government. And since then, we have announced the Alberta Nanotechnology Strategy, which is $130 million over 5 years. And I would say that the number really in the last 3 years of public funds and collaborative industrial funds going in is about $170 million.
Okay, so about 170. Ken, industry value at about $800 million. Yes. Is that a good return on that investment then, would you say?
Well, it's a growing industry. When ACAMP, for instance, got started just a year and a half, a little over a year and a half ago, until now, we're up to about 50 companies that we're supporting around the region. So the industry's growing. There's a lot of work to do. There is a huge market opportunity. I think if you look worldwide, that over the next few years, just in micro nanotechnology components, it's in the billions, tens of billions of dollars. And then if you look at systems, that's 10 to 20 times that just for system level activities.
Okay, so lots of potential there. Yeah. I guess the $20 billion question is set out by the provincial government is can we get there by 2020 to this $20 billion mark? Steve, is it realistic?
From a private sector's perspective, I think it's an aspirational goal, but a difficult one. I think to expect a new industry of that magnitude and very technology intensive, the investment has to be at the front end, has to be commensurate with that objective, and I'm not sure we're quite there.
So you would like to see more money being put into this, what, by the province, by private, by both?
I think all three levels, federal, provincial, even municipal. And the private sector has to do its part. But I think you have to work backwards. If you want to create a $20 billion of incremental revenue in 2020, what investment is needed today and at what stages? I think as a province we've done exceptionally well in funding and financing the front-end infrastructure, the NINTs and the ACAMPs. And then thereafter, to actually get a product to market, we fall short.
And that's where the big money is.
Well, if you don't do that part, you're never going to get to the big money, and we're not doing that part. So it is a challenge, I have to say. Yeah. And we do understand that with public funds, we do have to be careful on how we spend them. It is part of our mandate to encourage that industrial participation, to increase the rates of industrial uptake, one, and investment in the area, but also to know that overall we are putting in programs such as the NanoWorks program, which is an industrial partnership program, where we help de-risk the translation of that intellectual property into real, meaningful, marketable products and processes. It's a small step, but it is part of what we're trying to do in creating that continuum from basically research to the marketplace.
And you're essentially in charge of building this sector in Alberta. I mean, that's your job, that's your mandate. Right. Will that emphasis on sort of getting that intellectual property to market and start to build that part of it, will that become an increasingly bigger component of what you're doing?
Absolutely. In fact, it's probably better said, as part of the mandate of the Alberta Advanced Education and Technology, and its new, I guess, research and innovation system that it created with Alberta Innovates.
Okay, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about how exactly we're going to do that and whether it will be enough. More with our panel after the break. And of course, we always want to hear from you. Answer our interactive question: how important are emerging industries like nanotechnology to Alberta's future? Follow the links at albertaprimetime.com to have your say. We are back with our panel on Alberta's nanotechnology industry. Before we get back into the discussion, we're going to take a closer look at Alberta-based nano company Microline.
Microline is a MEMS fabrication center, so we develop and manufacture micro-electromechanical systems. A number of professors got together and created a center that gave them the ability to fabricate micro devices. Throughout the years, the company grew within the university. In 1998, we spun off as a private company, and we are a for-profit company that is now the largest independent fab in the world.
ACAMP is very important in that it fills a gap. There has been billions of dollars invested over the last 10 years in micro nanotechnologies around the region. And it's all through research and development. So there's a lot that's been pumped into the universities. There's been a lot of individuals creating companies around the region. ACAMP helps them through the process of business activities as well as productization.
We're a locally grown company here. We're globally recognized as an innovator, and a pretty good place to make a living at.
They are very important. Part of the entire ecosystem for micro nanotechnology, to have a company that can fabricate a wafer full of components is very important. So as companies want to evolve and create systems around the region, they're going to use Microline to build sensors, actuators, very sophisticated small micro components.
They interact with the environment so that you can measure motion, pressure, a number of other factors, and we use those measurements into systems to make smart systems.
For the Wii you're using now, it has 10 different microsystems built into one Wii controller. If you're in a car and your airbag deploys, that airbag sensor is a microsystem.
Alberta has invested in this area as a future technology. There are several up-and-coming companies that have very innovative technology. We're looking at current levels right now of being into the tens to hundreds of millions of dollars for revenue generated, but certainly that's expected to grow with the investment that is being made.